So, welcome everyone. I'm Alexander Mihaljan, and today we have one of the industry leaders, Ryan Lavelle, founder and CEO of Mepower. Welcome, Ryan. How are you doing today?
Doing great, thanks. Good to be here.
Awesome, and I'm excited to have you on the podcast today also, and I'm sure you're going to be of great value for the audience. Now, before we dive in, could you give us a quick overview of what Empower does?
Okay, um, so we are an impact ecosystem, which comprises kind of a network of local franchise businesses. We're focused on largely on the developing South. Um, at the moment, mainly Africa and Middle East, but we're looking to Asia as well, which is powered by a in-house developed technology platform called Impactivator. So if you think of it, it's a bit like an Uber model, which is decentralized, sort of ground up staging, disruptive kind of interventions in the kind of social impact arena, but focused on sustainable development programs in the global South. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, interesting. And basically, what inspired you to create Empower? Was there a specific moment or experience that sparked this journey?
Yeah, I mean it's a combination of a few different things. My personal journey into this arena of, let's call it, international development and justice and social equity really kind of started in the year 2001. I happened to be in New York on the day of 9/11, which is a big shock for me personally, and started me down a journey of asking bigger questions about why things are the way they are in the world, and why things are not fair, why developing countries are so poor. So kind of for a number of years, I got quite involved in more kind of on campaigning, sort of working with organizations that were doing what I thought was the right thing to address some of those issues. My mainstream career was in finance, so I worked in the banking industry and kind of saw from the inside a lot of issues and why I felt things are not working the way they should be. But it wasn't the right time then for me to kind of do something about it. So I kind of kept my political agenda as I wouldn't say a hobby, but it was sort of a background thing I was doing while I continued my career. But then in 2004, I met an African lady on a business trip back to London, and fell in love and decided to move back to the UK. Subsequently, we got married, had a couple of children. She's from Zimbabwe, so we had a lot of time spent there on the ground, seeing from first hand what's happening in those countries. And then it wasn't really till 2018 we actually left the UK and we came to live in Holland. In 2012, formed a new life here. And then along came Bitcoin, 2018. And then for me, that was another big phase shift, where I saw that finally, there was potentially a solution to some of these pressing development issues, and people can start to kind of work it a bit outside the system or around the edges of the system, which I could see would be a huge, a technology that would help a lot with these type of problems in developing countries. So with all that happening, I got an opportunity to get involved in a startup that was trying to do something with cancer and blockchain initially, and it was a project with great potential, and went in with both feet, as I tend to do, and gave it my best shot. But due to let's say unethical conduct or just bad mistakes on part of the CEO, that company that had great technology, great team, great vision,
Yeah.
failed. So I was left sort of going, what the hell, how's that possible? And, great sense of frustration, really, that
Yeah.
something like this, was not allowed to happen. Could have saved many, many lives, if we'd been successful with improving early detection rates. So I sat there going, like, what do I do now? Choice was, quit and just carry on with my work in banking as a consultant, or do it myself. So that, a few other things happened in the background that kind of showed me that, I was meant to go on a different course. in particular, being my background as an electronic engineer, I've always had a fascination with energy and alternative energy. In particular, followed very closely a lot of the controversies, let's say, in that field. Cold fusion and people claiming to have revolutionary systems. So this has been a hobby passion of mine alongside the need to do something about international development for many years. So all of this kind of led to the founding of Empower in 2019, where I decided to start my own company and go do something.
Yeah, interesting story. But for example, if you're looking back when you started the company, what would you wish you've done differently in those early days?
That's a tough one. I mean, you don't know when you start what you're going to run into, the kind of issues, and to be fair to myself, to be a bit kind to myself, I've gone through COVID, I've gone through a divorce, I've gone through a lot of like major life events and chaos and things
Yeah.
going on in the world, and it's made it quite hard to operate really. I've invested a lot of time in partners and relationships and opportunities that then, for whatever reason, didn't, through no fault of mine.
Yeah.
Like I've had people dying, for example,
Yeah, right.
in the middle of projects. You can't predict certain things. So we really, would I do anything differently? No, perhaps I would have focused a bit more on, building an income for myself, my own personal income security, kind of like, rather than putting all the eggs in one basket and believing that, this startup's going to take off at the pace I think it is.
Okay.
That's made life a bit challenging, at times. So, yeah, as an entrepreneur, founder, make sure you've got some personal security before you start on the journey, because it's going to take longer than you think. Especially the harder the project is, the longer it's going to take.
Yeah, exactly. And for example, what are the biggest challenges in commercializing the free energy technologies?
Well, I think you covered it in one sentence, right? I mean, commercial and free don't really go in the same sentence. And therein lies, the historical conundrum of why we know these technologies are there and why are they not available. Because, of course, when you have an economic system and a political system in the world that's grown up and been built up around taxing energy,
Yeah.
it's going to be exceedingly difficult to then come along and make it free, because that's going to collapse everything in terms of how governments are sustaining themselves in many parts of the world. So we have to find a way to make the technology available in a commercial model that doesn't break economies, and allow for the transition to the new platform, which I believe is AI and data. We're going to move. I see we're going to move to a world that governments are sustained through, let's say, the data economy and not the energy economy, and it's a new platform. So energy then has, the door opens to making these systems generally available to humanity, and therefore free energy.
Okay, interesting one. And for example, because you mentioned this previously, what did you learn from your previous startup experience?
Uh, how not to, how not to lead a team was a good one. If you're gonna bring a team on board, generally I like to work with people smarter than me, and you're going to bring people in an early stage company, it's because they're bringing some value or some expertise you don't have, and then you turn around and don't trust them. So leadership and management style really are the key differentiators that I learned, from a very bad example of doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's kind of was a big inspiration for me to focus a lot on the human, right? Not just in the company, but also what are we trying to do? It's not about carbon, and then it's really about people.
Yeah, right.
Because you've got to, people have to have that sort of buy-in to the mission. They have to have an emotional commitment to it. Startups are very hard things to do, and if you don't have the right energy in the team and the right personal commitment, it's almost impossible. So that's what I learned really, is around leadership and how to listen to the team, and empower them to achieve. Right, you're not there to be a god, a CEO, sort of dictating everything. You're meant to lead and coach really. It's more about coaching than it is about
Yeah.
control.
Okay, interesting. And then let's come back to this. And for example, how did the events of 9 of 11 shape your perspective on purpose-driven business?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I have to say for the record that there's a lot of questions about what happened on the day. I'm not going to make sort of inflammatory allegations, but there are many anomalies and things that made me question
Yeah.
what we are told. And I think subsequent events have kind of drawn a pretty clear picture that there's a lot of manipulation going on in the world. There's a lot of propaganda and misinformation and agendas that are not totally visible all the time. So, this for me really began an awakening process where I started questioning a lot more what we're being told, and feeling more like it's on us to take action. Government isn't necessarily always our friend, and therefore it's incumbent on humanity to step in and create the solutions we need for our own well-being.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really a big sort of push in that direction of autonomy and self-reliance, and being more like a bit more anarcho-capitalist in my view about things.
Okay. Okay. I see. And how are you disrupting industries like sustainable fashion and mining?
Yeah, so I said we're an impact ecosystem that is a technology platform and a set of capabilities. Um, for reference, if people want to understand a bit about the thinking, how I came about Empower, it's because I follow the work of Singularity Institute and Salim Ismail, who founded the OpenEXO Foundation a couple of years ago, and I joined that organization and kind of self-taught myself. Okay, what's this all about? What is it, an exponential thing? What do we mean by an exponential organization? So there's a blueprint for that. It has 8 attributes by which you can build an organization that, although it may be very small in terms of manpower, can actually beat, global companies, because of the way you're running things, the way you're organizing your resources internally and externally in the company, and leveraging hidden capacities to disrupt. So I very self-consciously designed Empower as an exponential organization. About 2 years ago, I kind of pivoted it away from the old traditional SaaS platform model to an EXO model that encompasses everything. So how we've applied that in the case of, for example, sustainable fashion, we've got a vertical we're putting there called Soho Space, but it hinges around capacity building a network of like fashion incubators, if you want to call them that. We call them cafes, but basically we're going to employ local, particularly vulnerable women that are coming out of abusive relationships, because fashion is a big motivator for women in general. It gives them a lot of drive and passion. So we got our first project we're setting up in Nigeria, in Lagos. If you imagine like a 2-tier sort of storefront, very urban, chic, modern style premise that has a kind of storefront that is showcasing
Okay.
the garments, and then on the upper floor you have a workshop that houses about 30 women all kind of working on hand making slow fashion garments that are ethically and sustainably produced. So the idea of this incubator is more than just the garments; it's also the whole fashion process. How we marketing the product, how we selling it, thinking about ecology and environment, but also let's say the modeling aspect as well. There's a lot of issues in that industry. So we're trying to pull it all together in one kind of ecosystem that's vectored around these hubs, these fashion
Yeah.
cafes that we're going to set up, different cities in Africa to start with. So that's kind of moving along. And in the mining space, we looked at it. We've looked at the impact of ESG regulation and what's happening and the impact that's having on mining, and that's a big issue. So we're in active talks with a couple of different mining partners. Interestingly, one of them who I met less than a month ago, we started the conversation. He was like, "We've got to raise some money. We've got to raise some money. Going to Amsterdam to meet the mine owners. And can you join the meeting?" But he was quite hesitant about what we were talking about with solar energy and permacultures
Yeah.
and things that ESG stuff. He was pretty skeptical, but we had a good chat, and I kind of convinced him that he needed to incorporate this type of thinking in his proposition. So he did, and then we had this meeting with the mine owners, also with one of our partners who does the solar energy stuff in Africa. And the feedback was that we helped him save the deal, basically. So this kind of was a good data point for us to show that our relevance in that space of providing the platform and the solutions and the thinking about how to make mining sustainable and actually not a kind of community tax, but actually a benefit to the community. So it's one
Okay.
example of how we want to transform
Yeah.
industries, seen as actually a resource for the community, not a polluter.
Right, right, right. And it's interesting, honestly. And now, walk us through how Empower addresses these challenges. What makes your approach unique?
Yeah, so I think we take a holistic approach. We don't come in with one size fits all ideas. We consult. We do a lot of background research and work to evaluate the best fit solution to any given problem, and then we talk to a lot of industry peers, and we're very active in industry in general, attending a lot of events, and hearing from the ground like what's the pulse on particular issues. Yesterday we did our pitch defense to the Lloyd's British Business Excellence Awards in the domain of diversity and inclusion. Although that is not our kind of main focus of the platform, it is, let's say, it is an important aspect of our work. We do want to enhance diversity and inclusion and have more women in technology and these sort of things. So yeah, I think it's kind of the scale and the approach we're taking, which sees no borders. It's global, it's all inclusive. It's meant to try to bring people together around common solutions that are appropriate to local problems. Right, trying to impose things from the top.
Okay, but I have a curiosity around this. So, for example, how are you using the Empower platform to connect investors with clean tech projects?
Right. So the goal of the platform in the initial stage, we are targeting our initial go-to-market strategy is around ESG CSR funding, of which there's a lot of, as you can imagine, there's a lot of money going into that space. Currently, a lot of it is deployed, through third parties or consultancies or NGOs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our goal, our vision here is to disrupt that by bringing the turnkey platform that, for example, if you can imagine, you're a cloud host partner of Amazon and you spend a huge amount of money on your cloud hosting every year. Probably not all of that funding is actually utilized. It's probably a percentage that sits unspent in the ecosystem. So our vision is to provide essentially a tick box solution on the AWS platform where users can select Impactivator and automatically redirect funds that are unspent from their cloud hosting provision to social impact programs. The way where we can use AI to match their particular themes or needs for ESG investment or offsetting with a menu of projects that we have on the marketplace inside the platform. So that's our initial focus, is to get the some part of the ESG CSR market flowing through our platform, mainly focused around the Heroes Academy, which is the incubator that is growing the talent we need to actually start these projects and build up, the larger portfolio of investable projects. Yeah. So, is there an opportunity for investors in the medium term? Yes, we will create a venue for the investors to come in and actually invest in the underlying SPVs, the projects they'll get tokenized, and then the investors can buy into the tokenized SPV. That's the kind of long game.
Okay, and how do you ensure this project is bankable and sustainable?
So that's where the heavy lifting is. We work, with experts in our own team, consultants and project developers, and we do a lot of curation within the ecosystem. The whole point of this bottom up model is that we have local partners and expertise that are working to vet the project. So we don't try to do everything
Yeah.
ourselves. As I said, the model is like Uber. So we have a Heroes Academy incubator, which is training the project developers how to do projects, whether they're starting their own business or whether they're working with an NGO partner. We're teaching them the basics and the principles of how to make projects bankable. But then we track and monitor that on the platform, so they have mentors, and we're observing as they are developing the assets for the project, like theories of change and impact metrics, business plans. Our team Basically one of the key jobs of the franchise team in each country is to work with that network of heroes to qualify their work and make sure that what we present to the platform is it's investable.
Okay, makes sense. And what role does data transparency play in building trust with donors?
Yeah, it's absolutely key, and that's one of the big areas of problem at the moment in the world. There is a lack of transparency, especially in this impact arena. There's a lot of international NGOs doing things. It's certainly not real time reported. They do have their annual reports and things they publish, but we're trying to white box that and bring a complete transparency layer from inception. From the start of a project and as an idea, all the way through the stages of developing it, and then putting money and funding in to actually execute and roll it out. We have monitoring every stage of that, and every transaction, even in terms of the financial drawdown and consumption of a project and the impact versus the impact of that. We're measuring that through our own digital MRV system that is specifically comparing. We said the project would have this impact for this money. Is it on target? And you can see that in real time on the platform.
Interesting. Okay, that's fair. And I found that innovative solutions face the initial skepticism. So when you talk to potential clients, what's the biggest misconception they typically have about what you do?
Biggest hurdle typically is anything to do with blockchain, crypto. It creates conversations. And that's getting better. I think it has improved in the last year. Certainly, big shift in the US, obviously, with the pro-Trump, the pro-crypto Trump administration coming in and changing a lot of the, let's say the hostility that was going on under the last administration that has enabled, major ecosystems like Ripple to get more traction and proceed with, doing the work they're trying to do to improve the financial system. So I think the mood has changed. Hasn't solved skepticism everywhere, and there is still a lot of resistance because, like any disruptive technology, some people are resisting it for bad reasons. Some people are just because they don't understand, So you face that challenge all the time. Is it an understanding issue, or is it just because they don't want it because they don't want the transparency?
Right. And now, looking at the broader industry, what key trends are you seeing emerge?
So it depends in which domain we're talking. We're talking about impact investment, or let's say ESG.
So let's say ESG as a broad topic.
So I think we know that as much as the Trump administration has been very good for crypto and blockchain, it's not been so good for, let's say, the whole idea of ESG, and carbon. They're pretty anti that whole space. So there's a bit of a tug of war or push and pull going on at the moment between European sort of worldview and certainly developing countries are very still pro moving ahead with things like carbon markets and carbon finance. So there's a lot of political uncertainty at the moment on certain things, but nonetheless, I think the weight of pressure behind ESG in particular as a domain is so strong now, and it's so embedded in the financial system and within the banks that it's virtually impossible to unwind it. And most companies, and indeed already well along with these policies and these programs. So we stay aligned, really, although we don't agree with everything in that space. It's kind of an 80-20 thing, where we think ESG is a net positive as long as the funding is going in the right sort of initiatives, the projects that are sustainable long term, and not it's not just another charity
right.
kind of thing. So that's again where we come in to show that versus organizations like USA just keep throwing money into unsustainable, non-repeat, rinse repeat sort of funding cycles. We want to put money into projects that actually sustain themselves long term. So I think that's where it's going. The money is really around this social entrepreneurship kind of model, and that's the place that we're specifically playing, is to capacity build people that are bankable for long-term sustainable projects. Yeah. So that's that domain. If you talk about blockchain, then I think there's just going to be more and more demand, because you see what governments are doing globally. The loss of civil liberties, People feel like they're, less control of their, how they can spend their money and where. Um, and let's say that, you know, technical and sort of PR slash, risk appetite towards things like crypto are diminishing. It's becoming more mainstream. So I think, it's all looking very positive, really, for.
Right. And it sounds like you're ahead of the curve in many ways, which make me curious about your growth plans. So, for example, how are you looking to grow for the next year?
Or meteoric, if we have our way. Like it's taken 5 years to get here. As you can see, that I've said there's been a lot. We've had to pivot a few times and adapt our thinking and really learn from working on community level. In it's about 7 countries now that we're operating in Africa, and that's a huge task, to and a big burden to carry as a founder. But it takes time to build the product the right way so that it gets the traction you want to then raise the money to actually to reach escape velocity as we think about it, startups. And I believe we are at that tipping point this month. We've got some things landed. We've launched the Heroes Academy platform now officially on AWS. That will start getting more traction this month. We're about to participate in an investor symposium in Texas end of this month, where it won't. I'm not expecting to come back with a check, but I'm expecting to open the right doors, and start building the right relationships with people that can really get behind this vision and help me take it to the next stage. It's ready.
Okay, that's interesting. But for example, if I gave you an extra $1 million for growth right now, where would you allocate it?
Mostly, it would be in shoring up the team. So it'd be in investing in making sure we've got the right people to really scale and drive the business globally. We would definitely open a US operation if I had the funding to do that. Only reason I haven't already is just purely that. We're stretched quite thin, as you can appreciate. 7 countries in Africa. So it would be putting a lot of foundations in. Doing the legal incorporation of our business operations in. We're still in debate between Dubai and Switzerland for the nearshore or fully offshore. Operations hub for the financing. So things like that. We would use that money to land the company, spread our footprint in terms of the actual operations, address the US market properly,
Yeah.
and really, go and hire the executive team on full-time contracts, and go for it. That's what we would do.
Yeah, interesting vision here. And before we wrap, I'm curious about what's on the horizon. So, when you look at Empower journey over the next few years, what possibilities excite you the most?
So I started the company on a vision of decentralized energy, and that remains, my personal passion. So, getting the platform to a point where we can launch. The platform in itself is already disruptive, right? That's already a big enough mission. But having succeeded at that and got Empower as a household name in impact, I can move on back to the what I started with, which was the energy decentralization. And there I have a particular blueprint design that I'm working to, where we want to introduce these new energy systems, and create basically a model where every house has its own energy source and compute and communications device that's all kind of integrated in one system. So that was the founding idea of the company, call it Empower One, before we went fully into platform. So, my hope is that I can get back on that track, on the research and engineering track, and work on the energy stuff.
Okay, that's amazing. And for listeners who want to learn more or potentially work with Empower, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, you can email us at info@empower.io. You can find us on LinkedIn quite easily, empower.io, MPOWA.io. LinkedIn is our most active platform, but we also have some other social media presence. But LinkedIn is the place to find us, or direct email.
Great, perfect. So thanks for joining me today, Ryan, and for this amazing podcast session. And for anyone listening, make sure to check out Empoa socials below in the description, because this episode was packed with value, and I can wait to see what you build next.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you. And once again, thanks to the audience for listening.
Great. See you on the next episode then.